There are a few tips and tricks that I have implemented for my clients in the past few years that have won us offers and made transactions go smoothly. Today, I want to go over a few of the common ones that I have used in the past with success. The first is post-closing occupancy. Not every seller needs time to move after closing, but if the seller of the property that you're interested in is selling so that they can buy another property, this may help you put your offer ahead of the competition. What this means is I would reach out to the seller and find out how much time they ideally need in order to move after they close on this property before they buy the next property. Then we write up an addendum O, which outlines whether or not we are going to charge the seller for rent. If you're in a position to not charge rent, that's looked at as a really good benefit to the seller, especially if it's only a few days of post-closing occupancy. As your mortgage payment doesn't start till a month after, this usually doesn't cost you much out of pocket as the buyer. However, if the seller's looking for something like 2 weeks or a month of post-closing occupancy, then you're going to consider a daily charge that covers your mortgage, your insurance, and taxes. The next two are very similar in that you're promising to cover a certain dollar amount only if it arises during the transaction. The first is during the inspection. I never recommend to waive an inspection entirely. However, it's up to you as the buyer. But instead, I say let's offer the seller an amount that you would be willing to cover when you find defects during the home inspection. For example, the wording looks like this: buyer to waive the first $5,000 of defects found during a home inspection. The amount, of course, is up to you, but this is a way to increase your competitiveness of your offer without actually having to pay anything like raising the price. The inspection could go fine and only have very minor issues, and then you're effectively able to make a stronger offer that never costs you anything. However, say you still find $20,000 worth of repairs needed, the buyer would then only be able to negotiate $15,000 of that above the amount that they said they would waive. And of course, in that amount of defects, you may end up canceling the deal if negotiations between you and the seller don't work out. But this is a very effective strategy when you are up against other offers that also have inspections. It shows the seller that you are not going to ask for minor repairs, which can cause a hassle in the seller's mind. I always recommend putting the highest amount here that you are comfortable with in offers. I've done anywhere from $2,000 to $15,000 in inspection waivers. The second is covering a gap in the appraisal value. The wording looks like this: buyer to cover the first $10,000 of appraisal gap. For example, say you're buying a property for $200,000 and the appraisal comes in at $180,000. You're saying that you will pay $10,000 towards that $20,000 difference. Then the other $10,000 is still negotiable with the seller. This is cash that would be on top of your loan amount and your down payment. So you do need to have this amount available. Again, this is an amount that may never come into a play if the property appraises at the purchase price. We used this a lot in offers when we were bidding over asking and sellers were thinking, I'd like to take this offer, but I'm not sure if it's going to appraise. I call it the put your money where your mouth is clause. Then there is the escalation clause. This is where you set an offer price in your offer, but you say that if another offer comes in at a higher amount, you are willing to beat that offer by a certain amount up to a certain price. We obviously set those in the offer. We use this commonly when we know that we're up against other offers right off the bat. This way, you can put in your target offer price and hope that none of the other offers are over yours, but you're covered and you could potentially still win if you're able to beat the other offer. Now, some people ask, well, don't they just see the highest amount you're willing to pay and ask you to pay that amount? And the answer is yes, they could. But if you are willing to pay that amount in order to secure the property, then you just have to ask yourself if it's worth showing your hand and letting the seller know exactly what you're willing to pay. If it means you win the house, is it worth it? This is something that you need to answer for yourself. However, there have been plenty of times where this works exactly as intended and we're paying what we need to beat the other offer, and it's not our max. This last strategy is more for sellers. I bet that a handful of you here learning about how to buy a house are also going to need to sell a house. But with low inventory, this can be a little scary for sellers to put their home on the market with nowhere to go. What I recommend to sellers to do if they need to sell their home before purchasing a new home is to write it in the listing that the seller needs to find acceptable housing. So if you are a buyer and the property listing says the seller needs to find acceptable housing, you may want to actually write this into the offer to make your offer something that they might accept and that the seller feels comfortable accepting. It does mean that you as the buyer need to be flexible on your closing date. What this looks like, for example, is seller to find acceptable housing within 60 days or whatever time frame that you mutually agree upon. If the seller cannot find housing, buyer can simply back out or simply extend the contract if seller agrees. As a seller, this gives you the flexibility to be able to find a home when you already have an accepted offer on your own home, then not needing to do a home sale contingency or being able to word it just a little different, like contingent on acceptable housing. It's treated just a little differently. These are just a few of my favorite tactics to make my buyers' offers more competitive when any multiple offer situation arises. If you are looking for a buyer's agent that does everything that they can to ensure the success of their buyers, please reach out and we are happy to help.